Hello, welcome. David wrote more about the night than anyone else in the Bible. He knew the long, heavy hours intimately, lying awake while enemies circled the camp, crying out into the darkness and hearing only silence in return, tears slipping quietly onto his pillow. He knew the watches of the night, those deep middle hours when troubles feel larger, fears grow louder, and morning feels impossibly far away. But David also wrote about sleep. "In peace I will lie down and sleep," he sang. "For you alone, Lord, make me dwell in safety. I lie down and sleep. I wake again because the Lord sustains me. On my bed I remember you. I think of you through the watches of the night." David had walked through every kind of night, the wilderness nights, running from Saul, sleeping in caves with 600 broken men, never knowing if morning would bring mercy or the sword. The palace nights, when he had everything yet could not rest, walking the rooftop, leading to the moment that broke so much. The nights of grief, lying on the ground, fasting, praying, hoping against hope for his dying child. And the nights of betrayal, an old man fleeing from his own son, once again sleeping in the hills like a fugitive. Every version of the night, and in every one of them the same gentle habit. He turned toward God. Not because the darkness always lifted right away, not because the answer he wanted always came, but because he had learned across every kind of night that turning to God was always possible, and that the turning itself was enough. David and his night psalms, the songs born in caves, in fleeing, in waiting, and in loneliness. And at the heart of tonight is Psalm 63, the desert psalm. On my bed I remember you. I think of you through the watches of the night. This is perhaps the oldest sleep meditation in all of Scripture. A weary man lying on the hard ground, choosing to turn his heart toward God through the long, quiet hours. If you are lying awake tonight in your own wilderness, David has been here before you. Let him gently take your hand and show you the turning. You are not alone in the dark, and the God he remembered is remembering you right now. You, God, are my God. Earnestly I seek you. I thirst for you. My whole being longs for you in a dry and parched land where there is no water. Psalm 63. 1. On my bed I remember you. I think of you through the watches of the night. Because you are my help, I sing in the shadow of your wings. Psalm 63, 6-7. I lie down and sleep. I wake again because the Lord sustains me. Psalm 3:5. In peace I will lie down and sleep, for you alone, Lord, make me dwell in safety. Psalm 4:8. If I make my bed in the depths, you are there. Psalm 139:8. The night has a problem that the day does not have. In the day, the unresolved can be managed. The tasks provide the forward motion. The conversation provides the external focus. The activity of the working hours provides the occupying of the attention that keeps the unresolved from becoming foreground. The day is the day in which the thing that cannot be solved is kept at the manageable distance by the structure of the day. The night removes the structure. The tasks are done. The conversations are over. The forward motion has stopped. And in the stillness of the night, the unresolved, the concern, the grief, the guilt, the fear, the relationship that is not settled, the future that is not clear, rises from the background where the day has been keeping it and becomes the whole of the field. The night is when the mind runs. The night is when the trouble feels largest. The night is when the morning seems furthest. David named this condition without flinching. My God, why have you forsaken me? Why are you so far from saving me, so far from my cries of anguish? I cry out by day, but you do not answer, by night, but I find no rest. Psalm 22. The night that does not bring rest. The crying out that produces no answer. The God who seems far in the dark. The distance that the day's activity kept obscured and that the night makes visible. David did not sanitize this condition. He wrote it down. He made it a psalm. He put words to the exact texture of the night in which the crying out is real and the answer is not arriving. And he also wrote the psalms that came from the other side of those nights, the psalms of the morning, the psalms of the answered prayer, the psalms of the sustaining. I lie down and sleep. I wake again because the Lord sustains me. The sustaining was not the absence of the night that needed the sustaining. The sustaining was the Lord's presence through exactly the night that Psalm 22 describes. The Psalms are the full range, the lament and the praise, the night of no answer and the morning of the answer, the God who seems far and the God who is there if I make my bed in the depths. The sin this scripture addresses is not the sleeplessness itself. It is the turning away, the night that is spent in the running of the mind without the turning toward God, the lying awake in the anxiety and the grief and the unresolved without the reaching that the night psalms model. The turning is the practice. The psalms are the form the turning takes. The night that runs without the turning does its damage in layers. The first layer is the compounding. The concern that is real in the day becomes, in the unturned night, the concern and the anxiety about the concern and the anxiety about the anxiety. The mind that is running the problem without the anchor of the prayer is the mind that does not reach a resolution, because the problem is not solvable by the running mind alone, and the running continues past the point of usefulness into the exhausted circling that produces neither the solution nor the rest. The night compounds the problem by adding the sleeplessness to the problem. The second layer is the distortion. The mind at 3 a.m. does not assess the situation with the accuracy of the mind at 3 p.m. The night amplifies. The concern that is genuinely present is made larger by the dark and the isolation and the absence of the day's perspective. The relationship that needs attention becomes the relationship that is irreparable. The financial concern becomes the catastrophe. The health question becomes the worst possible answer. The night distorts because the night has removed the counterweights, the other people, the daylight, the evidence of the ordinary that surrounds the concern in the daytime and shrinks it to its actual size. The third layer is the exhaustion. The person who has been lying awake for an hour with the running mind is more depleted than the person who slept. The effort of the wakefulness without the rest and without the resolution is the effort that leaves the person with less for the morning than the sleeping would have provided. and the morning that requires everything is the morning that follows the night of the running without the turning. Here is what the night psalms offer. The turning does not resolve the problem. The problem is still there in the morning. The turning does not guarantee the sleep. David was awake through the watches of the night, not unconscious through them. The turning is not the technique that produces the outcome. The turning is the anchor, the orienting of the mind toward the one who is present in the dark, the something to do with the awake attention that is not the running of the problem. On my bed, I remember you. The remembering is the turning. The turning is the practice. The practice is available right now, in this room, in this night, in whatever version of the wilderness is present. David wrote Psalm 63 in the wilderness of Judah. The superscription says this simply: a psalm of David when he was in the desert of Judah. The scholars have debated which desert period, the years of fleeing Saul or the later flight from Absalom. The tradition has generally favored the Absalom period, when David was an old man, the kingdom he had built now in the hands of his own son, who had turned against him. Either way, the setting is the wilderness. David knew the wilderness from the inside. He spent years in the desert of Judah and the hills of the Negev as a fugitive from the court of Saul, sleeping in caves, leading a band of 400, then 600 men who were also fugitives. 1 Samuel records the places: the cave of Adullam, the forest of Hereth, the stronghold in the wilderness of Ziph, the desert of Maon, En-Gedi by the Dead Sea. The geography of the running is also the geography of the Psalms. In those years, David learned to pray in the dark. Not the formal prayer of the temple. There was no temple, no ark within reach, no priest to offer the sacrifice. The prayer of the person in the wilderness is the prayer that has nowhere to go except to God. The stripped-down prayer of the person who has been removed from all the structures that make the prayer easier. The thirsty prayer: you, God, are my God. I thirst for you, my whole being longs for you, in a dry and parched land where there is no water. The Hebrew understanding of the night divided it into watches. The night began at sunset and was divided into 3 or 4 watches of several hours each. The first watch, the second, the third, the long middle hours, the deep dark, the time when the world is most thoroughly asleep and the wakeful person is most thoroughly alone with the wakefulness. David's watches of the night are the same watches that the person lying awake at 2 or 3 in the morning inhabits. The same hours, the same quality of the dark. I think of you through the watches of the night. The thinking of God through the watches is not the formal devotion of the daytime. It is the nighttime practice, the turning of the mind toward God in the hours when the mind would otherwise run without the anchor. The psalm is the record of the turning. Every person who has lain awake in the dark and said on my bed, I remember you, has joined the tradition that David began in the wilderness of Judah. The Psalms as a whole are the gift of the honest human condition held before God. The Psalms do not present the sanitized version of the faith. They present the full version, the lament and the praise, the abandonment and the sustaining, the my God, why have you forsaken me, and the I lie down and sleep because the Lord sustains me. The range is the gift. The person in the night that does not bring rest has a psalm for that night. The person in the peace I will lie down night has a psalm for that night too, and most nights are somewhere in between. David's psalms hold the whole range because David lived the whole range. The shepherd boy, the anointed king in waiting, the fugitive, the king, the sinner, the mourner, the old man in the wilderness again, every version of the night. Absalom had taken the throne, David's own son, the beautiful one, the one whose hair was so remarkable that when he cut it each year, the weight of it was recorded, the one whom David had loved with the blinding love of the father who cannot see clearly because the love is too strong. Absalom had organized the conspiracy and entered Jerusalem, and the people had gone with him. And a messenger came to David. The hearts of the people of Israel are with Absalom. David said to all his officials who were with him in Jerusalem, "Come, we must flee, or none of us will escape from Absalom." The king who had defeated Goliath and the Philistines and all the enemies of Israel was running from his own son. The man who had built the kingdom and established Jerusalem as the city of God was walking out of that city on foot, weeping, with his head covered and his feet bare. The people who went with him were weeping too, and David walked up the Mount of Olives, weeping as he went. He was crossing the Jordan and moving into the wilderness, back to the terrain that had been his home in the years before the throne, back to the desert that he had prayed in when he had nothing else. Shimei, son of Gera, came out cursing as David went. He pelted David and his officials with stones, though all the troops and the special guard were on David's right and left. Get out, you murderer, you scoundrel," Shimei said. "The Lord has repaid you for all the blood you shed in the household of Saul." Abishai offered to go cut off Shimei's head. David said, "Leave him alone. Let him curse, for the Lord has told him to. It may be that the Lord will look on my misery and restore to me his covenant blessing instead of his curse today." This is the David of the wilderness, not the David of the triumphs. The David who has enough left of the long relationship with God to say, "Let him curse, the Lord may have sent him." The David who still believes that the Lord can look on the misery and restore the blessing. The David who, stripped of everything, still knows the direction to turn. He came to where he was going to spend the night, and somewhere in those nights in the wilderness, the nights of the old king who had lost the throne and the city and was being cursed by strangers on the road, David wrote Psalm 63. "You, God, are my God." The earnestly before the seeking, the thirsting before the arriving, the whole being longing in the dry and parched land where there is no water. The wilderness psalm is the prayer of the person who has lost access to the ordinary sustaining, the temple, the palace, the structures that made the approach to God easy, and who is left with the bare relationship. You, God, are my God. The two words at the center, my God, the possessive of the covenant, not God in general. My God, I have seen you in the sanctuary and beheld your power and your glory. The memory, the thing that sustains the night prayer, is the memory of the morning. The I have seen you, that the I cannot see you now, is set against. Because your love is better than life, my lips will glorify you. The love is better than the life that is being lost, the love that does not change with the circumstances. the love that is present in the wilderness as it was present in the sanctuary. On my bed I remember you, the bed in the wilderness, the ground bed, the mat bed, the wherever. David lay down in the desert bed, and on that bed the remembering, the thinking of God through the watches of the night, not the triumphant prayer of the king in the palace, the desperate and faithful prayer of the king in the wilderness. I sing in the shadow of your wings, the wings, in the desert, in the fleeing, in the cursed and the stripped and the old. The shadow of the wings is over the bed in the wilderness. My soul clings to you. Your right hand upholds me. The clinging and the upholding. The person clings. God upholds. The action from both directions. The turning from the person's side. The sustaining from God's side. This is the oldest sleep meditation in the Scriptures, written in the wilderness, in the dark, by the man who had been in every version of the night, and who knew that the turning was the practice that the night required. The healing virtue of the night psalms is the night prayer. The night prayer is not a different kind of prayer than the daytime prayer. It is the daytime prayer in the conditions of the night, stripped of the ease and the structure and the daylight, and offered from the bed in the wilderness to the God who is the same God in the wilderness as in the sanctuary. The turning is the whole of the practice. On my bed I remember you. The remembering is the turning, the deliberate orienting of the mind toward God in the hours when the mind would otherwise run without the anchor. The remembering does not require the eloquence or the theological precision or the feeling of the devotion. It requires only the direction. The mind turned toward God in the dark is the mind that has done the turning, even when the turning feels thin and the remembering feels like the remembering of something distant. The Psalms are the form the turning can take. The person who does not know what to say in the night prayer has been given a library of the night prayers by the man who lived every version of the night. The Psalm 22 for the night of the no answer. The Psalm 3 for the night of the threat. I lie down and sleep. I wake again, because the Lord sustains me. The Psalm 4 for the night of the enemy. In peace I will lie down and sleep. For you alone, Lord, make me dwell in safety. The Psalm 139 for the night of the nowhere to go. If I make my bed in the depths, you are there. The Psalms are the words that the wordless night can borrow. The person lying awake without the words for the prayer can take up David's words, can say, on my bed I remember you, can say, I think of you through the watches of the night, can say, because you are my help, I sing in the shadow of your wings. The words are already there. They have been prayed through every version of the night by the person who knew every version. The biblical practical application is the watch. The watch, the hour of the night the person is in, is the hour of the turning. The third watch, the hour of the wakefulness that was not intended, the 2 or 3 in the morning when the mind has been running and the morning feels far. This is the watch of Psalm 63. The turning available in this watch is the same turning that David practiced in the wilderness. You, God, are my God. Earnestly I seek you. On my bed I remember you. The turning is tonight, in this watch, in this wilderness. The research on sleep, rumination, and the psychological function of the spiritual practice at night confirms what the night Psalms have always understood, and adds a precision that makes the practical path clearer. The first concept is the research on rumination and the anchor effect of directed thought. We encountered Thomas Borkowicz's research on rumination in the Philippians 4 session. The finding that worry is not the problem-solving it feels like, that the mind going over and over the unresolved concern does not reduce the anxiety but amplifies it. The anchor that interrupts the rumination is not the suppression of the concern. The attempted thought suppression produces the rebound effect, but the redirection of the attention towards something that can hold the attention fully. The night prayer is the anchor. The mind that has been running the problem without resolution, that has been in the rumination cycle of the 3 in the morning anxiety, is the mind that the turning toward God interrupts. Not by resolving the problem, by occupying the attention with something other than the problem. On my bed, I remember you, the deliberate directing of the mind toward the character of God, the memory of the sanctuary, the love that is better than life, is the redirection that the rumination research identifies as the most effective interruption of the cycle. The practical application: when the mind is running tonight, do not try to stop the running by suppressing the thought. Redirect. On my bed, I remember you. Name what is being remembered, the character of God that the night Psalms describe, the love that is better than life, the shadow of the wings, the if I make my bed in the depths, you are there. The anchor is the remembering. The second concept is the psychology of memory consolidation and the last thoughts of the night. The neuroscience of sleep has established that the brain during sleep is not passive. It is actively engaged in the consolidation of the day's experiences, the sorting of the emotional material, the integration of the new learning with the existing understanding. The material processed during sleep is disproportionately influenced by the material in the working memory at the time of sleep onset. The last thoughts of the waking mind shape what the sleeping brain consolidates. The night psalm is the practice of the intentional last thought. The person who falls asleep with the problem running in the working memory is the person whose sleeping brain consolidates the problem. The person who falls asleep with on my bed, I remember you in the working memory, is the person whose sleeping brain consolidates the remembering. The night prayer is not only the spiritual practice of the turning, it is the cognitive practice of the intentional last thought, the deliberate shaping of what the sleeping brain will work with through the night. The practical application: the last thought before sleep is the thought worth choosing. The night psalm said before sleep, even quietly, even simply, even just the one verse, is the last thought that shapes the night's consolidation. On my bed, I remember you. I think of you through the watches of the night. Because you are my help, I sing in the shadow of your wings. The third concept is the psychology of lament and the therapeutic function of the honest complaint. The researcher and theologian Walter Brueggemann has spent decades studying the Psalms of lament, the Psalms that complain honestly to God, that name the suffering without softening it, that say the my God, why have you forsaken me without the immediate resolution. Brueggemann's finding, confirmed by subsequent research in the psychology of grief and trauma, the honest lament, the speaking of the actual condition to the actual God, is one of the most psychologically healthy responses to suffering available. The lament that names the darkness is more healing than the positive thinking that denies it. The Psalms of lament are the form of the honest complaint. The Psalm 22 that does not pretend the night is peaceful. The Psalm 13 that asks, "How long, O Lord, will you forget me forever?" The Psalm 88 that ends without the resolution, "I am confined and cannot escape. My eyes are dim with grief." The Psalms that do not provide the resolution because the night that the psalm was written in did not resolve. These are the Psalms for the person who cannot pray the peace I will lie down prayer because the peace has not arrived. The lament is the form the faith takes when the resolution is not available. The practical application: say the honest thing in the night prayer. The night prayer does not require the presentation of the resolved faith. It requires the honest condition brought to God. My God, why are you so far from saving me? I cry out, and you do not answer. This is the prayer. The honest complaint directed toward God is more healing than the managed presentation of the faith that does not correspond to the actual night. The Psalms give permission for the honest night prayer. David's wilderness is alive in your life right now. There is a woman in the night of the no answer. She has been praying for a long time. The prayer has a name, the name of the person she is praying for, or the name of the situation she has been bringing to God across the months and sometimes the years of the faithful asking. The prayer is real. The asking is real. The love behind the asking is real, and the answer has not arrived in the form she has been asking for it to arrive. The night is the time when the not answered prayer is most present. The day provides the forward motion that keeps the asking in perspective. The night removes the perspective, and the not answered prayer fills the space. And the person lying awake with the not answered prayer is the person who is most at risk of the turn away, the gradual withdrawal of the asking, because the asking has not produced the answering. David was in this night. I cry out by day, but you do not answer. By night, but I find no rest. Psalm 22 is the psalm for the not answered prayer. The psalmist does not pretend the prayer has been answered, does not manufacture the resolution that the night has not provided. Says the honest thing, I cry out, and you do not answer. I find no rest. And then, in the same psalm, in me they trusted and were not put to shame. Our ancestors put their trust in you. They cried to you and were saved. The memory of the answering in the tradition is the anchor in the night of the not answering. The I have seen you in the sanctuary that David prays in Psalm 63, the remembering of the times the presence was felt, is the thing the person in the not answered night can hold against the felt absence. The prayer is not the guarantee of the answer in the form that was asked for. The prayer is the turning toward the one who hears, and the one who hears is the same one in the not answered night as in the answered morning. My God, The possessive is still true even when the distance is felt. There is a man in the night of the guilt. David knew this night from the inside. The guilt that follows the sin that cannot be undone, the Bathsheba and Uriah sin, the sin that was the worst of the long list of David's failures, the sin that the prophet Nathan named without flinching. You are the man. The night after the naming was the night of the guilt in its full weight. David wrote Psalm 51 in this night. Have mercy on me, O God, according to your unfailing love, according to your great compassion, blot out my transgressions. Wash away all my iniquity and cleanse me from my sin. The man in the night of the guilt carries the thing he cannot undo, the conversation that went wrong, the decision that produced the damage, the pattern that has continued past the point where the continuation is excusable. The thing that the night makes visible in its full weight, because the day's activity has been keeping the weight at the managed distance. The night psalm for the guilty is not the psalm that minimizes the guilt. David's psalms of penitence take the guilt seriously. They do not say it was not that bad. They say, wash away all my iniquity, cleanse me from my sin. The guilt is named fully, and the mercy that David appeals to is the unfailing love, the covenant love that has been present before the sin and that is being appealed to across the sin. Have mercy on me, O God, according to your unfailing love. The guilt is real. The mercy is available. The night prayer of the guilty person is the turning toward the mercy, not the pretending the guilt is not there, the bringing of the guilt to the one who receives it. And there is a person lying awake in the night of the ordinary weight, not the dramatic darkness, not the not answered prayer, or the guilt of the named sin. The ordinary weight of the ordinary life at the end of the ordinary day. The relationship that needs tending. The finances that need managing. The work that is not finished. The body that is tired, and the mind that will not honor the body's tiredness with the sleep it needs. The Psalm 4 is for this person. When you are on your beds, search your hearts and be silent. Offer the sacrifices of the righteous and trust in the Lord. Many, Lord, are asking, who will bring us prosperity? Let the light of your face shine on us. Fill my heart with joy when their grain and new wine abound. In peace I will lie down and sleep, for you alone, Lord, make me dwell in safety. The searching of the heart, the silence, the trust, the light of the face asked for, and then, in peace I will lie down and sleep. The peace is not the resolution of the ordinary weight. The ordinary weight is still there in the morning. The peace is the trust, the releasing of the weight into the hands of the one who makes the dwelling safe. The sleep that the Psalm 4 describes is the sleep of the person who has done the searching and the silencing and the trusting, and who can lie down because the lying down is not the abandoning of the weight, but the handing of it. In peace I will lie down and sleep. For you alone, Lord, make me dwell in safety. The tonight, this room, this ordinary weight, handed. The formation of the person who turns toward God in the night is the formation of the person who has practiced the turning across many nights. David did not arrive at on my bed. I remember you in a single moment of spiritual discipline. He arrived at it across the years of the caves and the wilderness and the palace and the sin and the aftermath and the second wilderness. The night prayer was the accumulated practice of the person who had turned toward God in every version of the night available to a human life. The first thing that changes is the quality of the wakefulness. The person who has been practicing the night prayer, who has been making the turning when the mind starts to run, who has been saying the psalm in the watches of the night, finds that the wakefulness changes quality across the practice. The wakefulness that was the enemy, the evidence of the failure to sleep, begins to become the opportunity, the watch of the night in which the turning is practiced. The I think of you through the watches begins to organize the wakefulness around the turning rather than around the running. The quality of the watch changes not because the sleep improves immediately, but because the watch has been given a practice. The second thing that changes is the memory. On my bed, I remember you. The remembering that David practices is the remembering of the I have seen you in the sanctuary, the memory of the times the presence was felt and the prayer was answered and the morning came. The person who has been practicing the night prayer builds, across the nights of the practice, a treasury of the remembered presence, the moments that can be brought to mind in the nights when the presence is not felt, the times the Lord sustained the waking, the mornings that came after the nights that seemed endless. The memory is the anchor, and the anchor is built by the accumulation of the remembered. The third thing that changes is the vocabulary of the night. The person who has been praying the Psalms in the night develops, across the practice, a vocabulary for the night condition. The words that name the darkness without being consumed by it. The words that orient the condition toward God without pretending the condition is other than it is. The my God, why have you forsaken me? That is the honest lament. The in peace I will lie down, that is the faith in the ordinary darkness. The on my bed I remember you, that is the practice itself. The vocabulary of the Psalms becomes the vocabulary of the night prayer. The words borrowed from the man who lived every version of the night and who turned toward God in all of them. The fourth change is the clinging. My soul clings to you. Your right hand upholds me. The clinging and the upholding are the two sides of the practice. The person clings, the deliberate holding on, the turning that is the clinging in the night. God upholds, the sustaining that comes from the other side of the prayer, the I lie down and sleep because the Lord sustains me, that is the testimony of the person who woke after the night of the clinging. The clinging, practiced across the nights of the turning, becomes the thing that holds when the night is darkest. And the upholding, the God's right hand that meets the clinging, becomes the thing the waking testifies to. I lie down and sleep. I wake again because the Lord sustains me. The formation, across the nights of the practice, produces the person who can say this, not as the theory, as the testimony. And now, let everything grow very still. David is in this room with you tonight, not literally, but the Psalms he wrote in the desert, in the caves, in the wilderness of Judah at the end of his life are here. The words that were forged in every version of the night that a human life can contain are here. The vocabulary of the honest darkness and the faithful turning and the shadow of the wings is here. and the turning he practiced, the on my bed I remember you, the I think of you through the watches of the night, is available right now. This watch, this bed, this wilderness, let the turning be made. On my bed I remember you. Say it, in whatever form it takes, the quiet word, the conscious directing of the mind toward the one who is present in the dark, the borrowing of David's words when your own words are not available. The remembering is the turning is the practice is tonight's beginning. The God who was present in the sanctuary is present in the wilderness. The love that was better than life in the palace is better than life in the cave. The shadow of the wings covers the bed in the desert. Let the psalm be the prayer. Whatever version of the night you are in, the night of the not answered prayer, the night of the guilt that the day has been managing, the night of the ordinary weight that needs handling before the sleep can come, there is a psalm for this night. My God, why have you forsaken me? If the not answered is the night, have mercy on me, O God, according to your unfailing love. If the guilt is the night, in peace I will lie down and sleep. For you alone, Lord, make me dwell in safety. If the ordinary weight needs handing, the words are David's. The night is yours. The God is the same. Let the upholding be received. My soul clings to you. Your right hand upholds me. The clinging is yours. The upholding is God's. The turning is the clinging. And the God whose right hand upholds is the God who sustained the waking of every person who has ever lain awake in the night of the wilderness and turned toward him and woken again in the morning. I lie down and sleep. I wake again because the Lord sustains me. Rest now. The clinging is done. The upholding continues through the night. On my bed I remember you. I think of you through the watches of the night. Because you are my help, I sing in the shadow of your wings. My soul clings to you. Your right hand upholds me. Psalm 63, 6-8. I lie down and sleep. I wake again because the Lord sustains me. Psalm 3:5. In peace I will lie down and sleep, for you alone, Lord, make me dwell in safety. Psalm 4:8. If I make my bed in the depths, you are there. Psalm 139:8.